Hey HTDA and welcome back to Old World, to what could probably be one of the shortest episodes in this series, but we're going to find out one way or another, because right now we have our daughter turning 18. We promised her to the old crone a couple of turns ago, a couple of years ago in terms of the game, and she's coming to pick our daughter up. So we can either just say, well, I'll take this loss with me to the grave, or we can attempt to deceive the crone with lies, or we can fight her. Now, I'm actually leaning toward this last choice. I mean, trying to deceive the crone with lies could be an option. Seems fine. This just seems boring. So let's go and see what happens when we fight the crone. I mean, we should be able to take on an old lady, right? And let's see, as the ancient hag advances on your beloved, you raise your blade from its resting place beside the throne. Before the crone can utter a word of poisonous magic, you strike her through the heart with the sharp tip of your blade. You order her head to place atop the palace gates as a warning to all those who dare threaten the family of King Cyrus the Intrepid. Well, this seems like a pretty good outcome, honestly. We actually gained some legitimacy from that as well as some charisma. So, welcome, daughter. You can stay in the family. And speaking of family and children, our son actually showed up. Barely clinging to life, however. A blow to the head has left parts of his skull fractured and his hair slick and matted with blood. And he is not able to tell us why this all happened. So he's no longer missing, that's the good news. However, we now get to decide whether we want him severely wounded or wounded. And these traits are not to be ignored, because either way he's going to get -2 to his courage for as long as he has this trait. But you can actually, well, recover from being wounded. But if you're severely wounded, there's a very high probability of our son actually still dying. So we don't necessarily want that again, because he's our only heir. So if we can keep him alive, we have an heir. So we can't actually instantly lose the game. On the other side, we don't actually have the money to cure him, but we can fix that by buying and selling some of our other resources, which I've done now. I sold some of my food as well as my iron, and now we can actually get him wounded. I do think this is worth it, just because of our high priority to make sure we have someone alive to follow us on to the throne in case something happens to us. Now, honestly, even though I'm currently severely ill myself, with a high probability of dying, it hasn't actually happened yet, so that's a very good thing. So let's just play it safe and make sure we spend the money to keep this game going. In the meanwhile, we got our 2 settlers, so the one we produced from our capital and the one we researched, so we should be able to take these 2 sites now. It will take a little while to actually get there, lacking roads, and that is also what I've been started to construct. So we actually have a little bit of road here. I'm not actually sure we can see. It's very hard to tell, but there's some roads running. As you can see in the tooltip on the bottom right, there is road here. Trust me. So let's make sure we keep that road construction going. Let's see, what else should we be constructing here? We have some road here already. We can just focus on the road building for a moment. We have 3 shrines up and running. We're making a 4th one somewhere. I actually forgot where I'm building the other shrine. Where am I building a shrine? Shrine? Is this a shrine? No, it's not. Oh, this is a shrine, actually. So next to the mine that we have for our salt. Also making a miner to actually get access to the salt resource, the luxury resource. And that will help us make sure, well, we get some benefits from actually having the salt in our territory as well. And we could actually just go all out and start massively building this road. Now you can actually better see that there's a road here, so that's very nice and easy. And I actually have some orders left, so I'm currently going to settle this, and then I think we're going to go straight for this location here, take these Danes out. I'm still not sure where the invasion from the Danes is coming from. I'm also a little worried from the fact that we have Carthage over here, who's expanding quite heavily, but they have so many places to expand all the way here in the back. So they are being very strategically sound and expanding into that, at least into our direction at first. But that means we should probably focus on making sure we grab some of these locations when we can. That's actually an argument maybe to see if we can grab this one over here, just so the Assyria doesn't take that one and we have kind of an outlying base to fight anything in this area, and maybe grab this one as well. If we can grab that one, those two sites, we should actually be in a very comfortable position to expand in this direction as well. Although I'm still not sure, do we have one more nation to go? If they're over here, that could be very interesting. I actually have no idea what's over here, which is also the reason why I'm currently building a scout to find that out. Well, that's not a good thing. Luckily, we have our son back, so we'll probably get to the point now where we're going to see a change in leadership. Now, that's not because we're sick necessarily, but simply because we're growing old. And of course, there is a limited time on this world for every one of our leaders. And our son, even though he's still wounded, should be able to take the throne nonetheless. Speaking of which, our prince, our son, our heir, has recovered from his recent injury. So he's no longer wounded, no longer at risk of dying, at least not from anything we know about. It has left him scarred, which is actually a good thing, because there's a positive trait where he gets a +1 to courage. Nothing special, but it's a pretty decent thing to have. And let's see, our son actually has pretty decent stats. He has 5 wisdom, 4 courage, and 3 discipline, so no charisma like his father. But all in all, I actually prefer these stats over what our current leader has, so we shouldn't have too big of a problem getting him into a good solid position once he takes over from his father. And even more family drama, and I'm guessing this is going to be the last bit for a while, other than maybe our own death. But the court actually is concerned about our lack of heirs. I'm not entirely sure why that is, because we actually do have an heir, but we could also have a second one. Not necessarily a bad thing. And we could actually legitimize Artazostri? I'm not sure how to pronounce it. It's the names in this game, man. But yeah, we could actually legitimize her, and that would actually give us a small hit to our own score, of course, because we've done something that's kind of frowned upon. But that does actually give us a bonus to, well, not necessarily a bonus, but we would actually have a second heir as well, so never get into this issue once again. I'm actually inclined to do this. The -2 is not a huge deal, I think, and I kind of feel guilty for almost giving her away to a crone, even though I did kill the crone in return, so yeah, might as well just make it official. We're also good to go to found another city. The second settler is still on its way, but it's worth talking for a moment about what family to pick. Because if you hover over this, if you found a city from a certain family, it actually impacts their opinion about you too, because they actually want to have the most cities from all the other families. They kind of compete between each other. So if you keep founding cities from the same family, they will be really happy with you, but the other families will not. So it kind of makes sense from that perspective. You want to kind of keep everyone happy, to divide your cities more or less equal between the different families. I already have 2 cities from the riders because we wanted them connected. So what we could actually do is, well, basically take one of the other 2. Now in this case, because the hunters get a bonus, I believe, from camps and nets, yes. They actually make for pretty good coastal cities, and we have fish over here, so that will be gaining from the nets bonus. And as well, if we're going to take this position, we'll have plenty of nets here as well. So from that perspective, I think it makes sense to make this a hunter city, and then maybe make this a clerics city. There's not really anything of interest over here, so we might as well just build some monasteries and things like that. So that means we'll go here and found a hunter's city. Now, we'll actually get a little bit more sight, and there is an island over here. That's interesting, although it does seem to be tiny island, so there's just a small feature over here. We're going to have to build boats at some point as well. We don't currently have the technology yet, so let's just do the sensible thing and start working on a worker first. Now it's worth keeping in mind that you don't have to build roads just everywhere. If you start building a road, you can actually see from the territory what is connected and what is not. And by doing so, you can see that we have all the green that's connected. And we only have to build a last bit of tiny road over here, and that should connect everything up to our empire. So if we now look at the road and river overlay, that's not the one I want, trade network. As you can see, everything now turned green on the right side of our empire. Also means, because all the water is connected, although it's interrupted by the Romans down here, if we connect one of these cities to our network, which should probably be this one, because these urban territories automatically come with roads. So just building a few roads over here will actually connect this city to our network, and then I think we should have everything instantly connected, which is going to be helpful, because then we have those 6 connected cities that we want. We do need to make sure we actually have a worker to do that. But this worker is going to be done 1 year from now, and he can start working on a road, and then we'll have a second worker coming up pretty soon after that as well. Actually, while I'm looking at it, I'm thinking that maybe we should... Can I click this? Yes. I'm actually thinking we should probably build a road from here to here, because that will just connect our cities more nicely. We'll probably also want this road, and maybe even a road from here to the north as well, to be simply connect these 4 nodes up. We'll actually have a better connection from this city elsewhere, and this is also the city that's going to be building our chariots and things like that if we need any more of them. So it makes sense to make sure we don't have these cities kind of disconnected from the rest of our empire. And there we go, our leader died, and now our ambitions become legacies, which means we have 20 turns to complete them. And if we don't complete them in time, we'll actually get a negative to legitimacy. But if we do complete them, we'll still get the bonus. So this is just something to remember, because you should actively be trying to complete your ambitions. If you don't want to do that, that's perfectly fine. Just make sure that you pick the options where you don't actually try to get those ambitions going. Usually you have an option to say, I don't want an ambition, and just get some experience instead. Because if you don't complete them, there is a downside to that. Now, specifically in our case, our leader died a little bit earlier than I was hoping. The 4 shrines should not be a problem. We are already building the 4th one that we need. The 6 connected cities, like I said about the road, should not be a problem, especially not if we prioritize it. 20 years is quite a long time to complete a simple road system. We'll actually need the 6th city, but we're almost that far. 5 developing cities is going to be an issue, I think, because, quite frankly, we just founded our 5th city, let alone have it cultured and evolved. And that's likely going to take more than 20 years we have, but yeah, you can't win them all. And even if we complete the other 2, that still means that we completed 3 ambitions already out of the 10 we need in order to win the game. If that's the win con we're going for, not necessarily, but at least we are making some good time on that. And because we did King Romulus a favor in the past, he's now approaching us. With us is right now our son, which is Smyrna's the new. That's interesting cognomen. But anyway, we can either accept the repayment of that favor with a huge donation. So this is 9 turns worth of our income at the moment. That's huge. Or we can say, no, just keep the favor for a moment and just keep it in our pocket. I'm actually inclined to take this huge boon. It's always a little bit unclear what you're going to use it for. And we can definitely use the money at this moment. So it seems an obvious choice to go for this one. Whenever you get a new leader, there's always going to be some events that help you kind of fine-tune what you want your leader to focus on in terms of statistics, goals, etc. Now, in this case, I always recommend kind of leaning into a strength that you already have. We currently have a leader that actually has quite a high wisdom, courage, as well as discipline, which makes it quite easy to go into pretty much any direction. However, the events do always come as a trade-off. So you gain some stat in one regard, but you also lose something else out. You'll also get some random bonus attached to that. So in this example, we'll get some culture in our capital, which is not a which is already a developing city. So it's not going to help us towards our ambition. But actually, I think I'm going to go for this option. You could also just say you're already perfect. But I'm going to go for this option, which will actually give us some additional science, which is nice. It's 3 turns worth of science, so we'll instantly get POTUS completed. And we'll lose out some courage, but I'm not heavily focused on the tactician route for this specific leader anyway, and we'll gain some discipline. And because we already have 4 discipline, the 5th is going to be a major boost to our global gold production, which is going to be extremely helpful in pretty much building whatever we want, because remember, you can use that gold in order to influence people, but also towards buying and selling of goods in case we lack anything, although we do have a pretty decent production of pretty much everything at the moment, but more is always better. And another new aspect that we haven't covered yet is the luxury. So we now have access to salt, and instantly the Sassanid come up to us and say, hey, we want a cut of the wealth, we want that salt. And it's very easy to explain why they're asking for that, because they actually have that as one of their 2 preferred luxuries. So if we give it to them, they'll become more happy. Happy families are always a good thing, and it's a very easy way to make sure that if you keep your families happy, your people happy, etc., etc. So you can send it to them. If you don't do that, you'll actually get a huge minus in opinion. So you'll actually have to come up with a very good reason not to give your luxuries to your families, although you could actually send them to other nations as well. They will highly appreciate that as well. So it's basically just a trade-off. Who do you want to please? But typically pleasing the people in your own kingdom is a pretty good place to start. Okay, so let me think here for a moment. The 4th shrine is not an issue. The 6 connected cities should not be an issue. I already have this road almost completed, and as you can see, all of this is interconnected. So this should take care of that. Then, oh, there's actually crabs over here. That's interesting. Anyway, sorry, distracted there for a moment. But then we got the 5 developing cities. We have 2 of them already, which is Parsa and Herba. Ortospana over here will be, within 2 years, will also become developing. So that should not be an issue. So we're on 3. And Shiraz over here will be there in 14 years. So that is also not going to be a problem. Now the real question is, can we actually get one of our other 2 cities that far as well? We currently do not have a lot of options to build stuff that has anything to do with culture. That was the word I was looking for. But what we could actually do, maybe, is we could actually go for festivals over here. We should be able to complete 2 of these in 10 years. And that means we'll get 2 per year from that point onward. So that's 20. Well, actually, 25. Did I do that math correctly? So we'll have 1 festival up and running for 15 years. So that's 15. And we'll have another one up for 10 years. So that's another 10. So 25. Yes, I did that math correctly. Phew. And we already have 1 culture here because we have honey. So that's going to be another 20. So we're 45. So if we could just like spam some shrines and Odeons and things like that over here, although that is going to take quite a while, we might actually be able to push this to the developing stage just before this actually turns off. And that would actually mean we'll have 4 ambitions completed from our first leader. That could be very interesting. So I'm just going to see if we can push it. We are going to make that extremely close, I believe. But it's worth trying. And just to point out how valuable orders get at this point, and we lost quite a bit of that because we now have a lower legitimacy, because some of that was tied to our previous leader and we only get half of that in return. And our current king hasn't actually done anything yet, so he still has 0 from himself. As you can see, I still have plenty of units to move, and I could move, but I'm out of orders. So it's highly important, especially right now, for example, when we're trying to prioritize getting those improvements completed for the culture in our 5th city and the road system completed and stuff like that, that you don't just start moving around your scouts just because you can, for example, but you actually prioritize the things that are most important for what you're trying to achieve in the short term. Speaking of ambitions, we just completed the one for the shrines, which is a legacy ambition. So as you can see, we get a 10 points bonus from the ambition that we finished while our leader was still alive, and now 5 for the legacy that we just finished. we'll have the road system completed in this turn as well. And now we actually get an option to pick a new ambition, because our families are in for a fight, and we can decide whether or not we do not want to get into that. Again, if you don't want to complete it, you don't think you can, you should probably not take it. But we have two options here. We can either kill 15 military units and get some opinion bonus for that, or we can try to capture 2 foreign cities. Now this one is definitely more difficult, considering that we have plenty of barbarians and tribes and stuff like that to kill, and we're going to do that anyway because we want to expand. This could actually, well, getting the foreign cities under our control would not actually be a bad thing, but that actually requires quite a bit of a military that we currently don't have. So I think this is just a safer option, and we can always bring the fight to our enemies if that's what we want to do. But this would actually put some additional pressure on that. Well, this is pretty safe to complete. And again, one more ambition completed takes us one step closer to the end of the game. And for the wife of our second leader, we get to pick a little bit different from the pick of our first wife. So initially we had to pick between our families, and it's kind of like making sure that we didn't piss anyone off and get into a lot of trouble that way. But right now we actually have a more interesting option. So we can either say, well, we have no interest and just figure out what we want to do ourselves. Or we can make use of this free event and take a Numidian, which is a tribe. Not too interesting, generally speaking, so I don't necessarily recommend that unless you have a very good reason to do so. We could marry into the Sassanids. It's interesting. This character in particular is not too interesting herself. So, yeah, not entirely sure that's the best option. Or we can actually marry into the Romans. And other than the fact that having a 5 charisma wife is not a bad thing at all, she's a pretty good governor as well, so that she has a lot of things going for her. This will actually raise Rome's opinion of us as well, and that could be very interesting to make sure we don't get into too much trouble with them in the long run. So it's a very nice way of kind of managing our relationships in the meanwhile, kind of like how it actually was in the old times. So I'm actually thinking marrying a Roman wife could not be a bad thing altogether. Okay, and there we go. We have an Odeon in production now. We have a shrine over here. We have a second worker over here that's going to produce a second shrine. And hopefully that should mean that we get to about 10 culture per turn in time to actually complete the ambition of those 5 developing cities. We're going to cut it close, but I think we should be able to make that just in time, question mark. I haven't done the exact math, and that's mainly because it depends a little bit on how much time it took me to get these workers here, but I think we should be fine in completing that. We have the connected cities, we have the road system completed, and we're actually working on the 50 military units already because we're going to have to clear out these Danes from over here anyway. There were some barbarians in the way. We have some more barbarians incoming, so the 50 military units should not be a problem to be completed. Since we're only 32 right now, we should have at least 30 turns to do that. Hopefully a little bit more than that, honestly, because our first leader died pretty young. And probably get some more ambitions going in the meanwhile. I always really like winning the game with ambitions. It's just more interesting than doing so with just military might and things like that. But it's definitely easy to get sidetracked and just take over the world anyway. Depends a little bit on how the game goes, I suppose. Next time I want to talk a little bit more about a couple of more economic things. Yes, it's actually going to happen because we now have honestly reached the mid-game. We're going to have to talk a little bit about the resources, about balancing, but also how to plan out your cities. We now have a Jewish disciple build as well. We'll have to worry a little bit about what to do with certain improvements, but we're going to talk about that next time. If you're still here, you are awesome. Make sure to like and subscribe if you haven't done so, and I hope to catch you in the next one.